Welcome back, everybody, to my underground lair, aka my parents' basement. Today I will be talking about Blood Rites, Book 6 of the Dresden Files saga files. So as I mentioned in my March TBR video, I just finished up Blood Rites. I'm going to be reading Deadbeat, which everybody tells me is like the start of the really good, awesome Dresden books. Blood Rites was definitely a step down for me from Death Masks, and I'll go ahead and do some spoiler-free talk before I jump into the things I liked and didn't like about the book specifically. I've mentioned plenty of times before that I love Stormfront. Full Moon was kind of a step down. Then Grave Peril became my favorite. A lot of people have Summer Night as their favorite. It was a little bit for me. I didn't care about the Fae. Death Masks hit on every note for me. It introduced us to the greatest villain that I've seen in the series so far. Had my favorite side characters. It was just a pretty perfect Dresden book so far. Blood Rites is definitely a step down. It's still good. I've seen this critiqued by a lot of people. I know years and years ago, Daniel kind of dogged this book. I look all over Goodreads. There's, 2 to 3 star reviews for it. Not a lot of people love this one. But if you've come this far, you kind of know what to expect so far from Dresden. And if the next book is taking that and making it better, then I'm still on board. I'm not complaining about this one. It wasn't great. I do like the general setup and premise. If you're used to Dresden Files, Harry is down on his luck, needs money, needs to take on some kind of, magical investigation. Once again, that is sort of the initial setup of this. What's funny, though, is he's kind of lied to in a way of, like, who hires him and why. And he finds himself on the set of a porno, and he is a production assistant. You take Harry Dresden, you put him on the set of a porno, and then you throw in a bunch of vampires. There's the beginning of this book. And of course, magical things happen. There are murders that he has to investigate. The police get involved. Murphy is a little bit more involved in this one than she has been in previous novels. And that's, first and foremost, one of my biggest positives of this book is the police officer, Murphy, who in the first couple of books really is just a thorn in Harry's side. She's constantly trying to get him arrested, really doesn't like what he's doing, because she doesn't really understand sort of the magical elements of this world and all the crazy magical battles and stuff going on that she's not aware of. She knows a lot more about it now, and she is becoming more of an actual character in this book. She gets much more involved. I started to enjoy her a lot more in this. She certainly doesn't take shit from anybody. She will love to put a man in his place if they try to treat her like a little princess or, make sexist jokes towards her. She will shut him up quick. So she's actually growing on me a lot. And Harry, of course, is always funny. I mean, especially with this premise, like Harry Dresden's personality and humor put on the set of a porno with vampires involved, like he's gonna say some hilarious shit. So overall, very solid entry to the series. Definitely not my favorite. Probably a little bit lower on the totem pole of the 6 that I've read. But like I said, Deadbeat is apparently like where the series just completely takes off and everything is smooth sailing from there. So if you've made it this far in the series, keep reading. You'll enjoy this one for what it is. So let's just jump into some spoiler stuff, talk about what I liked, what I didn't like, and just overall thoughts. So see you next time, those of you that don't want spoilers. So spoiler talk for Blood Rites. Obviously, as I guessed, Blood Rites, vampires, makes sense. So you get on this set with Harry on this porno, and he figures out that Arturo, has all these different wives, and they kind of hate each other and hate him for having other women that he loves, and people start dying. You understand that, obviously, probably one of these wives was behind it. And then Harry just thinks that it's kind of like a simple, crazy ex-girlfriend or crazy ex-wife trying to kill people. Then realizes that Thomas basically didn't tell him a whole lot of stuff that was going on, that this was heavily involved with vampires. Harry starts meeting all these different vampires that are on set, and you have this whole white and black vampire courts battle going at it with Thomas on the one side kind of roping Harry into helping him against his father. So his father, I forget his first name, but their family name is Wraith. He is kind of keeping Thomas, out of the game. He wants him gone and dead because he's basically killed all of his other brothers, all of his sons. he doesn't want them to have any threat to his rule. And you meet, Lara, who's Thomas's crazy badass sister, who is sort of like a thrall to their father. He's just completely brainwashed her essentially to be like his dog essentially. And you have just this whole back and forth dynamic of these two courts going at it, because as you've seen growing throughout the series, you have like the red court, the white court, the black court, however many vampire courts there are, they don't like each other, and there's like truces between them, but they're kind of at war with each other. So you see that a lot here, especially in the scene in the alley, like towards the end, when Harry ends up basically trying to save Thomas and then has to fight with Lara against the black court vampires that show up. Temporarily, obviously, Lara does not like Harry Dresden, or Thomas for that matter, but they do have to kind of put their differences aside to fight together just to survive, because she will fight for her family, so she wants to save Thomas, and I forgot the other chick's name. But so you have this whole like vampire court expansion going on behind the scenes of the story, which is interesting because I keep mentioning this in Dresden reviews, they get more and more involved. So like in Deathmask, you had the whole thing with Ortiz and the duel and how he survived that and then got back to his court. So like they're going to be coming back and forth. So you have this whole vampire dynamic constantly they will just screw anybody and everybody over to kind of further their own goals. Speaking of the vampires though, obviously like the biggest reveal of this book is Thomas and Harry are brothers. So they, of course, soul gaze. You get the whole moment, Harry talking to his mother. That was really touching. So now you understand that like he actually has family. They have a reason to fight for each other, and he has another ally, which he kind of needs because most of this world wants to kill him. You get a lot more from Murphy in this book. She kind of gets into almost a damsel in distress scenario, and they kind of joke about the fact that that's happening. There's the whole running gag about like Harry saw her in her underwear, and now he's like, oh, she's a woman, she's not just a cop. Harry being Harry, But with Susan gone pretty much permanently, I'm guessing he'll end up getting together with Murphy at some point. That's probably going to happen. But I love Murphy getting more as a character, and when they had that meeting with Kincaid, and he's like completely just talking shit to her. She basically tells him to fuck off. Like, she wasn't taking it from him because he was basically egging her on, trying to get a reaction out of her, and she was just like, just shut that shit down. So that was a good scene. What was kind of great towards the end too is when, Thomas and Lara have that moment. They basically overthrow their dad, but Lara keeps him in power because she is basically going to be running things behind the scenes because she knows that he isn't really powerful anymore. He's kind of just holding up this facade that he should still be in charge. So to uphold that facade, she basically strips Thomas of all of his family rights, all of his money, says like, you have to leave, you can't be associated with us anymore. If you do come around, like, we'll kill you, sort of thing. So he does get to go and like crash on Harry's couch. So I have a feeling Thomas is going to be more of a mainstay in the story because he doesn't have his family to rely on anymore. He did, bail Harry out by paying for his money that he owed Kincaid. At least that's how I think that last scene went. I'm looking forward to continuing this. I want to see more Thomas as a character now that he's, him and Harry know about each other. Thomas already knew, but now that Harry knows that they're brothers, they can further that relationship and sort of build as characters throughout the book together, hopefully. I do want to see more Michael. I always love when he's in the book. This book also lacked a lot of Bob. This was almost one of the most like detached stories I've seen so far, where it's really just Harry on the set of this thing, and then everyone else is kind of involved in that. There really wasn't a lot of like going back to his apartment. There wasn't a lot of like, there was no White Council really involved. This was a pretty concentrated story around this vampire war that was happening. So that was interesting. It just wasn't my favorite. I've just seen better from this series so far, and now that I have all the mediocre to good books out of the way, it should be just onward and upward to all this fantastic Dresden goodness that everyone tells me about. So I'm looking forward to seeing more of that. To the one-star Goodreads reviewer that I talked about in my video here, talking about death masks and how she was so put off by that scene between Harry and Susan, and she was going to rip those pages out so that her husband wouldn't read them. Don't read Blood Rites. Just don't do it. So, to wrap this up, for those of you that either skip the spoiler section or watch the spoiler section, Blood Rites is pretty good. I'm definitely looking forward to continuing on to Deadbeat next month, because that is supposed to be, you know, the start of the fantastic Dresden novel. So definitely looking forward to that. Drop a comment down below. Let me know your thoughts on Blood Rites. Did you love it? Did you hate it? What so far of these first 6 has been your favorite? I'd love to hear from you, and also in Discord as well. We have lots of great conversations in there about all sorts of books, so definitely come hang out. It's a pretty cool, chill Discord to sit in and just talk about books. So, of course, there's always Patreon. Can't forget that. If you do want to support the channel financially, it's always optional, but always greatly appreciated. Thank you to all my patrons, and we will be having another Howler pick for next month upcoming, and we will continue this read along through the first law and go from there. So until next time, guys, I'll see you in the next video. Peace.